Hello, and welcome to an episode that talks about audience analysis. I'm Swati Singh, a media professional for the last 12 years specialized in mass communication. I have worked as a media professional with Hindustan Times, Indian Express, Career Launches, Times of India, etc. And I've also taught digital and social media in various universities and colleges, including the Delhi University. Today, we shall be discussing about a very important part of our social media business, that is, audience analysis. We might be creating the best of publicity campaign and best of marketing strategies, but if we cannot identify the correct audiences, we are in for a very rude surprise. Not knowing our audiences would ensure that we lose on our efforts and end up doing zero successful work. Therefore, it is more than crucial to identify the right people who would be the flag bearers for our products and services. People who would buy our ware and who would be engaged with us for good. Now, let us start by discussing the objectives of this episode. The objectives of this lesson are to understand what is target audience analysis and why do we need it. How do we define and classify our core audiences? What is the best way to identify the pain points of audiences? To learn about the various resources and tools out there that can make this process more streamlined. So, who are our target audiences, you may ask? Well, the target audiences are our exact customers or audiences who we need to interact with regularly with respect to our brand communication. Since, unfortunately, marketing budgets are limited and you won't have the luxury to cater to everyone that might be a potential customer. Our target audiences will often consist of different groups of people that don't necessarily visit the same websites, have the same problems, use the same social network channels, etc. So, let's just ask, what does audience analysis helps us in? Well, it helps us in finding the right and exact audiences who might be interested in our product. To craft personalized content aimed at specific targeted personas. It helps in delivering a more effective content marketing strategy. It also helps in being more competitive as a business. It helps in developing long-term relationship with our customers. With a little drop of creativity and the right copywriter, creating good content is not that hard. However, just having good content doesn't translate into more customers. Rather, having the right content just might. Knowing who your real audience is, what kind of problems they are dealing with and what can you do to help them will allow you to take a more personalized approach in your content marketing strategy. Having the right content is the direct consequence of your target audience research. Making it great is just the execution. So, how do we plan the analysis? The scope of your research correlates with the size of the project that you are working on and how familiar you are with the niche. It's only logical that you won't spend the same amount of time researching your target audiences for a client that needs a few editorials only as for the one that has a huge monthly subscription. Therefore, you will have to adjust how much time do you afford to allow and allocate for each step. Some information can be gathered from the brand, and this would define what pieces are still missing. To complete the puzzle, we need to make a list of to-do tasks, like to use softwares and programs like Google Analytics, Quora, Reddit, keyword research, etc. We also need to get familiar with our product and service. For that, we need to be familiar with creating and publishing content one has a shallow understanding of is a very dangerous game. What's even worse is not fully understanding what our brand's product or service does. It can limit us in several different ways. For example, we can miss out a potential target audience group if we do not know what exactly a product or service we represent and it covers. The quality of the content of our produce drops down if we do not understand our audiences. Lesser understanding of the product service means the subject area you can cover with the content is more narrow. Also, not understanding the product leads to not being able to present at all the advantages to your offer may result in lower conversion rates and loss of potential customers. To avoid all this, we can do several different things. We can start by trying out the product service for ourselves. Well, it is safe to assume that the client will let you take it out for a test drive off charge. The second way of doing it is to take our time to research the brand's website and look at their existing content that explains what they do in more detail. The next thing you can do is make a questionnaire and explain to the brand in question that it is in their best interest to give us proper answers for the same. If the above steps are not enough, you should consider jumping on a call with the brand and the client and solve any open questions that way. When you have a clear understanding of the product and the service, you are tempted to create content around its benefits and advantages. While that can be worked in a situation where you are using paid channels to focus on prospects that are near the bottom of your marketing funnel, you will have to be more creative and less promotional when you decide to reach out to the influencers and bloggers. That is the reason why you have to clearly distinguish what you do and what your audiences want and need to read about. Connecting one with the other requires a fine balance between plugging your business and just delivering useful content to your target audiences. Which site should play the main role depends on which channels, price per click, guest blogging, influencer outreach, email marketing, etc. you're using to promote the content. Now it's time to define our target audiences. So there are some steps you should take before you start with a deep target audience research. That is, to define common characteristics of your average buyer. While defining demographics, it is important in the context of the content marketing that you should give more thought to what kind of people you are talking to, what they like and dislike, what are their problems, pain points, and so on. This will allow you to create more engaging content that will have a better chance to strike a chord with your potential customers. So we need to understand demographies first. In order to strike a chord with your customers, you need to know their demographies. The various pointers to keep in mind with this respect are their age, their gender, their income, their location, their marital status, their religion, their occupation, their ethnicity, and their education. Depending on the project you are working on, some of these characteristics could have little to no relevance, and you shouldn't waste your time on them. Also, there is always a possibility that you will have to distinguish your target audiences by an attribute that isn't on this list. So, keep that in mind too. Look at this list more as a recommended outline rather than a rule of law. If the brand doesn't help you with determining the demographics of their consumers, you can look at the average consumer and try to explorate the necessary data. Alexa and Quantast can help a lot during this process. If you get an opportunity to run a survey, you can use SurveyMonkey to craft your own surveys. In instances where your brand has a decent amount of followers on Facebook and Twitter, you can use their analytics to try and deduce some demographic data that way. It is of utmost importance to understand the psychographics of your audience as well. In order to avoid getting overly technical, the psychographics data is used for classifying people by looking at their attitudes, aspirations, and other psychological criteria. It ultimately allows you to find what are the motives behind people's purchases. Defining psychographics can be really challenging because it revolves around subjective information in contrast to demographics that rely on hard statistical data. There are three main areas you want to define. Firstly, what are the interests of your target audiences? Secondly, what kind of activities or hobbies do they take part in? And thirdly, what are their attitudes or opinions towards a particular subject? Knowing what information to look for is only the first step. Now, you have to go out there and gather a lot of data. A few different ways to gather psychographic data is by making a survey, by interviewing the existing customers, by doing research on the websites and forums these customers visit, by making use of powerful analytic tools like behavioral tools, heat map tools, website survey software, etc. We need to classify our target audiences. The decision-making unit is a term that describes a group of individuals who are involved in the buying process of products, services in the business-to-business environment. There are 6 roles in the DMU you need to be aware of. It is important to note that one person can cover multiple roles. The roles are of user, initiators, buyers, influencers, gatekeepers, and decision makers. There are 3 roles you should focus on, which are users, influencers, and decision makers. You often won't have the resource to cater to everyone, and these are the roles who believe you can have the most impact on content marketing. We start with the users. Users are obviously the people who are using your product or services. Now, one might ask as to why are they so important? Well, the answer is simple. They have problems and we are here to help them with the solutions. It also doesn't hurt that users often take the role of initiators. Let's introduce as an example to simplify these things. Well, you are a content marketer looking to do a target audience analysis. You notice that the quality of your target audience analysis is constantly subpar because the current tool you have at your disposal doesn't allow you to conduct a proper keyword analysis. What do? As someone that will use the tool, you reach out to your superiors asking if there is a possibility they could purchase some software that could help you solve the problem at hand. This makes you both a user and an initiator. Let's go to influencers. An influencer can be anyone whose opinion has an influence on the decision making. There is a whole marketing area dedicated specifically to influencers, a thing called influencer marketing. You may have heard about it if you are a marketer and your product or service gets recommended from someone famous. Your sales could skyrocket if this is used properly. Taking into account the authority that a celebrity or a public figure brings with them, well, lots of companies would pay good money to be on that list. Now let's talk about decision makers. As the word suggests, decision makers are the ones that have the final say or the word about the product and services purchased. They are basing their decision to buy on the information they got from the users, influencers, and other roles involved in the buying process. It is hard to be exact as the roles and phases can overlap, but it is often ending up like this only. Users bring awareness and interest. Influencers create interest and consideration and intent. Decision makers lead to intent, evaluation and purchase. So, now let's study about the tools that can be improving and speeding up our target audience analysis. For a keyword research tool, there are challenges since there are multiple options available out there, which can help us make our content more target audience oriented, namely Ahref, SEMrush, etc. We also want to learn which tool fits best into our workflow and what pricing options do they offer. Additionally, customers are not always aware that they have a problem on that you offer something that could improve their workflow or make their life easier in some way or the other. In such cases, you should put some effort into creating content that will make them aware of those problems and potential improvements. In short, your target audience may comprise of different roles, different information they might be interested in. You should use that knowledge too. For instance, so people will open up, read and act on your emails. Your job is to recognize the role you are reaching out to so you can serve them the content that they most like to be interested in. Now let's come to the conclusion. To sum it up, we can suffice that target audience analysis is an integral part of any marketing strategy. The only way to know what you should talk about in a marketing campaign is to know who you are talking to and what they want to know. The goal of this lesson is to provide an easy to follow in-depth information on everything you need to know to conduct a proper target audiences analysis. And now it's time for a quick recap. Today we discussed about the need and use of audience analysis. We learned about the various techniques and understanding we require to carry out such analysis. Also, we talked about the various popular tools on internet like the Word Tracker, Longtail Pro, SEMrush, etc. that can help us design great communication and help us in identifying our target audience communication. That is all we have for you today. Hope you enjoyed the session and learned about the significance of target audience and learned the techniques to identify them and also understood about the tools to communicate with them. We shall soon return with another interesting episode on social media. Until then, farewell and namaskar.